Hello and welcome. In today's video, we will be taking a look at TSLY, which is the Yield Max Tesla Option Income Strategy ETF. Of late, this ETF has become very popular, and people are wondering if they can use this income to basically replace their regular income because this ETF offers insane distribution rate. So as of the making of this video, it has a distribution rate of around, as you can see on the screen, 49.85%, almost 50%. But only a month ago, I believe it was almost 60%, and prior to that, it was around 70%. And it is possible it could go back up to those rates in the future. So, is this a great investment? Well, if we only look at this ETF alone, we may not be able to make that decision. But I'm going to provide you a comparison with another similar ETF, which is the Tesla Yield Shares Purpose ETF. Just like Tesla, this ETF uses Tesla as the only holding, as the only underlying holding, and it uses a covered call strategy. But that's where the similarities end. Now, the one primary difference I do want to highlight before we even start with the comparison between the two ETFs is that this ETF actually trades on the Canadian Stock Exchange, whereas Tesla trades on the US Stock Exchange. So that's something you might want to keep in mind because it will also play an important role when we do the comparisons later on. But unlike Tesla, if we look at its distribution rate, it is only around 15 to 16%, which is, again, it's not a bad distribution rate, but compared to Tesla, is quite low. But the reason why this is low is because they apply the covered call strategy very different from Tesla, and that plays an important role in the distribution rate. But it also provides other advantages. So even though we are getting a lower distribution yield, there are other advantages with this ETF which we do not get with Tesla. So let's start the comparison. So first we must just understand how the two ETFs are organized, because we know both of them are using covered call strategy. And if that's the case, their yield and overall performance should be similar, but that's not the case. So the reason why Tesla is able to generate such insane distribution rates is because it uses something called a synthetic covered call strategy. So instead of actually holding Tesla shares, it simply uses a combination of calls and puts and writes covered calls on top of that combination, which allows the fund to sort of lower its cost basis, because if they directly held Tesla shares, that would cost them more. By using a combination of calls and puts, they are able to lower their cost basis, which allows them to magnify the income that they're generating, and thus they're able to generate this incredible distribution yield. But as we can see, while we have this advantage of higher distribution, it also leads to a disadvantage where we are not really getting any growth from the capital. And in fact, it might happen that we might see a capital erosion over a period of time. Now, this fund is pretty new, so we do not know whether that will happen, but that's what a lot of people are predicting, and that's what I feel as well. But if we look at YTSL, this fund uses a very different strategy. So they have actually laid out their strategy on the page right here. So what they're doing is they are using a 25% leverage and writing covered calls on only 50% of the holdings. So this way, you're receiving a capital gain on almost 75% of their total holdings. And with the covered call being written only on 50%, you are actually getting a good distribution rate as well, which I think at 15.75%, it's not bad. I mean, if a regular stock is paying around 7% dividend, that's considered incredible. So this is still more than double uh, the highest paying dividend stocks. So you're participating in Tesla's capital growth and at the same time receiving a good distribution. And I believe that's a better way of going because Tesla is still a high growth company. If you really look at this Tesla stock and see some of the predictions that we have over the next 5 to 7 years, I think it's going to be a really good growth company. So this, in many ways, offers a really good way to earn money while you're holding Tesla shares, but at the same time, you're participating in the stock's growth. Now, let's do some other comparisons. Let's take a look at the management fee. So, with YTSL, it's 0.40%, but with Yield Max, it's 0.99%. I don't see, oh yeah, the expense ratio over here, we see 0.99%. And in fact, the management fee might be a little more because we do not get the exact data until the fund is 1 year old. So we might see the exact percentage over here. But if you just look at the cost of owning the stock itself, it's still lower with YTSL. Another thing I want to highlight is the distribution as itself. So let's take a look at it. So with TSLY, the distributions have been generally all over the place. Like it was 99 cents, then 90 cents, then 82, then 44, then it went up to $1, and the most recent one was 58 cents. So there is no consistency in the distribution, and obviously the fund manager has made it clear in a number of his interviews that the distribution will vary depending on the volatility of the underlying holding. So if the volatility goes down, then the distribution will also go lower. If the volatility goes up, then the distributions will be higher. But if we look at the distributions of YTSL, they have been pretty consistent. 0.3067 all throughout 2022, it was the same distribution as we can see over here. And recently they increased it to 35 cents in the month of August. So it's been a pretty consistent dividend income that you're getting, regardless of how the stock price is fluctuating. And you're also again capturing the underlying holdings capital growth, which we will just see in the total return of the two ETFs base. So for this is now YTSL, the total return so far has been 91.42% year to date. If we go to Yield Max, the total return has been 54%. So once again, YTSL is outperforming in terms of the total return. So what's the final verdict? Is YTSL a better investment than TSLY? Well, again, it depends. If someone just wants the income, like a high income, and not necessarily the growth, well, they can just do with the income, and TSLY might just end up being a good option for them. And this yield is so good. We can just do a simple calculation over here. Like, let's say if you invested $80,000 today in TSLY, and you're receiving, and you keep receiving a similar yield over the next 1 year. So you're receiving almost $40,000 as income in 1 year for an investment of 80,000. Like if you look at it really, the average income in the US is around 40 grand. So you're receiving the average US income for an investment of less than $100,000, which is insane. So again, Tesla is really giving people almost like a financial freedom card. Of course, this ETF is not yet tested. It's still early days to really speculate whether it will be successful or not. But if they are able to keep up with these insane yields, this might just become a financial freedom card for a lot of people. What about YTSL on the other hand? Well, as I said, if you want to invest in the long-term growth of Tesla and earn some cash while holding it, this is a great option. Also, I think this is a great option, especially for Canadians, because now you don't have to actually convert the Canadian dollars to US dollars, because a lot of brokers in Canada do charge the 1.5% fee. Even I think the ones that do not say they are charging that fee, they do end up giving you sort of a lower conversion rate. So, and the other thing is, if especially if you're in Canada, um, if you're buying Tesla in in a non-registered or even in a TFSA, you're going to pay a 15% withholding tax. So let's say like you invested $100 and you're receiving $49.85 in return. When you do the math, when you subtract the 15% withholding tax, you're actually receiving only 42.37%. And again, if you're also like with a broker who is charging you 1.5% for converting that US dollar to Canadian dollar, then you're in addition paying another 1.5% to actually get the money in Canadian dollars. So you're actually losing out on a big chunk of your income with Tesla, especially if you're holding it in Canada. So I would say, like for Canadians, YTSL just certainly seems to be a better choice. In America, I think you can go with either one, depending on which one you prefer. Or you can also just go with Tesla and buy some Tesla shares on the side to maybe counter the capital erosion which might happen with this ETF. But again, do your own due diligence before like buying either of these ETFs. They are both using covered calls, and really it is important to understand how covered call works to really before making any investment decisions in these kind of ETFs. So let me know in the comments, which ETF do you find more interesting? Is it TSLY or YTSL? Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.